right, so this is the Ocean Optimism Summit, so they had to ask entrepreneurs, right? You guys know the joke. 90% of entrepreneurial ventures fail, so if you decide to be an entrepreneur by nature, genetically, you're an optimist because you believe you're going to be that 1 in 10 who makes it. And my venture's just a baby. We just started at the end of 2014, so the jury's still out on whether or not that's going to happen, but I've never been one to stand back and admire a problem or ask for permission to take action, so this is what I did. I started a company that sells frozen fish, and everyone's probably like, oh my God, frozen fish is so gross. Everyone in here eats fish twice a week, right? Yeah, if you eat fish twice a week, I want to see your hand. Okay. Everyone in here knows they're supposed to, right? Right? Okay. This was the problem when I grew up. I really wanted to be Jacques Cousteau. I mean, I was convinced I was going to be a marine biologist, but instead I happened to be born in Western Pennsylvania, daughter of a coal miner, right? So not really set up to succeed, from that perspective. And, truth be told, we ate fish like 5 times a year, every Friday in Lent, and it was some of the more traumatizing experiences in my childhood. So I didn't grow up this huge fish lover, okay? So we started to have a little bit of a problem, though, because I have this dream of our oceans being as healthy and teeming full of life as they were back in the 1800s and up really through like the 1950s and 1960s. And I started to learn about the potential for sustainable aquaculture to solve some of the challenges that we have as a planet. Now, everyone in here that didn't raise their hand or grew up like me, we're part of the challenge, right? Only 10% of the people in the United States eats the USDA recommended amount of fish. And, the result is pretty obvious if we, look around at our population. We're not the healthiest people on the planet, although we consume the most resources on the planet. If we could get everyone eating fish twice a week, we could reduce our overall population mortality by 10% and deaths from heart disease by 35%. That's like smoking cessation and seatbelts put together, folks, just by stepping away from the Big Mac or the steak or the pork chop twice a week, okay? We can do this. But I thought about, why don't I actually eat fish, right? And I started working in aquaculture, and I met these most brilliant scientists really making sustainable aquaculture possible. And no, I know there's some bad aquaculture out there, but the industry has come a long, long way in the last 30 years. And we have the potential today to produce the most resource-efficient animal protein on the planet with very minimal environmental footprint, with very little of the environmental toxicity that we have in our wild fish today. Because when you control the system and you control the diet, you can control out for that. But, I was intimidated by how to actually cook fish because I didn't grow up doing it, right? And frozen fish is supposed to be gross. We've been trained that way for 30 years. So my product was really designed to take away the fear and intimidation from eating fish. And since I didn't know any better, I thought we could do it, right? I don't expect you to read this, but I do want you to check it out on our website if you have a chance, right? So there's a lot about aquaculture that people don't realize. And I think the role that aquaculture can play in our food system is pretty tremendous. We can take the pressure off of wild fish species. When it's done right, it's got minimal environmental footprint. And it's some of our most resource-efficient animal protein. And it's good for the body. So it's good for the body, good for the planet. It's an unequivocal good news story. But what I've realized as I got a little bit further in this business is that most people don't know much about aquaculture. Has anyone here been to a fish farm? Whoa! This is the coolest room I've ever been in. Yay! All right, well, I wasn't prepared for that, so I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures. So this is my friend Omar's farm down in, it's called Pacifica Aquaculture in Baja, California, down near Ensenada. And I love to show people this picture because it really, to me, shows kind of how a great fish farm can live in conjunction with nature. So, above the farm, we've got healthy bird cultures. Below the farm, the benthic layer of the ocean is intact. It's, not measurably different than it was before the farm started. And surrounding it is an incredible amount of biodiversity. It's a pretty cool place to go and visit. I mean, could you imagine recruiting for a company where, this is what you took a boat out and looked at on a daily basis? I'd work there, right? Pretty awesome. So I take fish from great places like this. I package it with a sauce that's frozen. You cook this from frozen, so it's a really super clean ingredient list. It goes freezer to plate in about a half an hour and pretty much makes it idiot-proof for people to cook great fish at home because everyone knows they're supposed to. They just kind of don't know how to do it. And what I've found is that, most people want to make a meaningful difference in the environment. It's just kind of hard, right? And no one goes to the grocery store and says, boy, you know what? I'm going to make a difference in the planet, and they say, no, I'm hungry. What am I going to cook tonight? What tastes good and what's easy, right? We now have more products in the grocery store than ever that make it possible for people to make a meaningful difference in the environment and their personal health without even trying, right? And I've spent thousands of hours in the grocery store demoing my product and talking to customers, and what we find is that 93 out of 100 just don't care that this is some of the most sustainable protein that you can buy, and that this is good for the environment and can be potentially restorative. What they care about is that it tastes good and it's easy. And then they put it in their shopping cart, and all of that other stuff, all of those good benefits happen kind of magically on the backside, right? And this is what they eat for dinner. So that's a little introduction to me and my company. I am incredibly optimistic about the future. The future is actually here. Some of the challenges that aquaculture has had in the past, most people still believe that we harvest wild fish and feed them to farm fish. That happens much less often today than it has before. And with incredible advances like Callista, which is a microbial protein, we can replace that fish meal. Things like algal prime, which is a fermented algae that produces an omega-3 that's very similar from marine sources. We can actually produce really great farmed fish with waste products that we have available to us today. So Callista you create from a methane combustion process. So think about the methane that's produced in our traditional animal agriculture and produced out of fracking and other industrial processes. Can now produce Callista, a really high quality microbial protein with a byproduct of water, right? How many other great things can you think of where we throw off water, fresh water, as a result? So with that, combined with things like Blue Wrap, which make it possible for us to have a much cleaner and a smaller greenhouse gas footprint supply chain, we can now move fish and other food sources without having to rely on air freight. So we can keep a lot of that carbon out of the environment that we didn't have to before. And by upgrading our super freezing technology, we can now make sure that we minimize our food waste, because if we're harvesting precious resources like animals and plants from our environment, we really should be eating them and not putting 30% of it in the dumpster behind the grocery store because it doesn't look perfect anymore. So with these three things combined, in the next 2 years, I think we can make a really huge difference in our food system, and I'm excited about that and excited to be part of the change.